Hello everyone and welcome to Red Hot Go, the show where I give my first impressions on a movie, game or anime suggested by you. This week, by recommendation of my wonderful patron Data52, as well as Slurp, Duncan Bones, Woorel and Fish Eyes, I will be giving Pet Girl of Sakurasou a Red Hot Go. Honestly, this show is a bit of a mixed bag in terms of things I liked and disliked, so I'm going to flip-flop between them as I go. To begin, the exposition in this show is downright dreadful in the first episode. Just about any form of sloppy exposition you can think of can be found here. Ongoing narration or dialogue between friends, contrived character introductions with their own spectators. It honestly gets downright insulting how much information is directly spoken to the viewer. But possibly the worst part of this exposition is that it doesn't even get the entire message across. I feel like each character's backstories were blurted out at me, and yet I still don't know what some of their deals are. The main character of the show, Saratha, is actually pretty good. Ultimately, he has enough personality and character to not come off as a monotone slice of bread protagonist. He reacts decently to the things happening around him, and his unconditional love for cats endeared me to him right away. His characterization does somewhat suffer from the lackluster exposition, but I still can't help but root for this guy. Then we get Mashiro, and to be completely honest, Mashiro isn't a character in the first 3 episodes. She is a tool. Her first line in the show, asking Saratha what colour he is, serves to set up the overarching theme, but nothing else. She's so passive in the story that she literally doesn't even put her own shoes on, and even her backstory only serves to force Saratha to reevaluate the way he looks at life. Maybe later in the show, Mashiro will get some characterization, but for these first 3 episodes, she is the blankest blank slate character I have ever seen. I quite like Ryunosuke. The idea of a character impacting the plot who we don't get to see is kind of interesting. So far there has only been one interaction with him, but it reminded me of the kinds of conversations that I have with my own friends over Discord, so seeing that conversation in anime form was quite nice. I kind of wish that his AI maid didn't exist and that he would speak to the characters himself in those moments, but that's getting pretty nitpicky. The rest of the side characters are okay, but all of them except Nanami exacerbate my biggest pet peeve with this show. Pet Girl of Sakurasou contains a lot of moments that feature sexually explicit elements. Things like nudity, conversations about sex, gestures of affection, and all sorts of content that make the show not suitable for a younger audience. Now, any of you who have watched my channel will know that I strongly object to the sexualization of underage characters, but that isn't really what bothered me about this show. Most of what happens kind of makes sense in the way that these are a bunch of teenagers living in a home with no adequate supervision. What bothers me is that these moments are only presented for the purposes of fan service. There are no themes being explored around sexuality or nudity or anything that could come from scenes like this. It's all meant to be ogled at and not thought on beyond fantasizing about the characters, and it just comes off as wasted potential. And creepy, right? Like, they're still kids, so this is obviously still very creepy. However, while the lack of intimate themes in a show with intimate scenes is my biggest gripe, my biggest praise for the show is the theme that it does seem to cover: passion. Every resident of Sakurasou has a talent that they dedicate their lives to, which is something you see very often in anime about young people. Even some of the biggest shows in the public consciousness, like My Hero Academia or Haikyuu, feature main characters who know exactly what they want to dedicate the rest of their lives to. But this is seldom the case for people this young. This reality is reflected in Saratha, who has no passion besides taking care of his stray cats. While I'm sure that his character arc will conclude with that passion being found, for the time being it's nice to have an anime character as old as 17, struggling with their identity and figuring out what they want to do with their life, because that is what adolescence is like for more people than anime acknowledges. So while the show is dragged down by a non-character of a female lead, clumsy exposition, and sexually explicit scenarios that ultimately say nothing, it is also held up by an endearing main character, some interesting side ones, and a main running theme that you don't get very often in modern anime. From ice cold to red hot, I give this show a rating of lukewarm. I'll keep watching it for now, but I'm not sure if I'll be finishing this one. And that is it for this episode of Red Hot Go. I'd like to thank my patrons Orion Train, Quincy Chamberlain, Gemman5, Lars Espen, Shark, Data52, Nerxu, and Pix Caliber. If you too would like to support the channel, why not become a patron yourself? Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.